It is 7:30 on this Tuesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Eoin and Johnny with you right the way through until 9:30 this morning. Plenty happening. A lot of interesting stories in the newspapers on a national and a local level this morning.
You should be reeling. How are you so professional?
Is
this the first time your kind of journalistic credentials have been castigated in the media?
I don't see my journalistic credentials being called out anywhere.
What's happened?
More on that later. The Mayo News have reported comments from Mayo GAA, which we will get to in the newspapers this morning. We dare
anything we want to hear about.
Dare and prioritise any other newspaper story ahead of any other one. Busy show. We've got a retro jersey segment coming up later on with
nice.
Richie McCormick.
I like that.
Yeah, so do I. The thing is, I've got a terrible sense for the retro jersey. I often need to be told what is nice, and then I realise, yeah, that's a pretty nice jersey. If you had to buy one retro jersey this Christmas, Johnny, what would you buy? I realise I'm putting you on the spot here.
Ooh, my favourite retro jersey is genuinely one I actually have. It's like a Galway United jersey from the mid-90s. After that, the Liverpool away jersey, the Carlsberg dark green with the three stripes coming down here from about 94 maybe, because that was the first Liverpool jersey I bought, £26 at the time in Mount Bellew. Ireland Italian 90 jersey was a classic as well, but I've made this point on the show a few times. There are far too many jerseys nowadays. They come out like every year, which I think is wrong, because you just forget them straight away. Like they don't have any time to become iconic, I suppose, and I don't like the fact that it's just, oh yeah, we have a jersey every year now.
What's your view on the retro jerseys being kind of remade for modern purposes, like the Arsenal bruised banana one, which is obviously being used in away games, and there's a kind of more of a classic look?
Yeah, is
it a bit of a cop-out, basically?
It is a bit, yeah. It is a bit like, just don't make jerseys as often and make them good. Like, Bows have come out with a great jersey this year, and it's really, really nice. And you'd hope that would set in for 2 or 3 years now, not just change again next year, because you just forget about it. But what's your favourite, like, jersey maker?
Adidas.
Adidas.
Yeah, the three stripes. I know, like, O'Neill's managed to, I don't know what they did, but they managed to skew the rights, and they managed to get the three stripes.
Yeah, I could never figure that out,
for the Kerry jersey.
Maybe Adidas nicked it off O'Neill's. I doubt it, though.
Well, possibly, actually. You could be digging into a conspiracy theory there.
Who knows?
What constitutes retro? How far back do you have to go retro? Because, like, if you're thinking about iconic jerseys, like, I never would have considered, say, Ireland's 2002 Aircom jersey as an iconic one. And then it showed up, remember, there was a Japanese model who was wearing the Aircom jersey in a shoot in Tokyo there last year, I think it was. And all of a sudden you're thinking, maybe this is iconic and we just don't appreciate it.
It probably is retro, like, 2002, 17 years ago? Yeah, it's retro in my book anyway. A nice segment of the show, though.
Yeah, it is.
Definitely, yeah.
Richie's going to be in. He's been chatting to Ger about that. So if you've got any Christmas presents still yet to buy and you think somebody might like a jersey or two, Richie will have a few ideas for you. We're going to get stuck in as well to some of the sports photos of the year a little bit later on with Brendan Moran. And there's a new ESRI report out looking into the demands of intercounty players. To give you the full title of the report, we're going to have Ailish Kelly with us a little bit later on. It's Safeguarding Amateur Athletes and Examination of Player Welfare among Senior Intercounty Gaelic Players. It's probably the big breaking news this morning. I can go through the rest of the coming up there. The sports page is coming in just away. Football at 8:05. The best guides, as we've already mentioned, at 8:20. After that, then the sports news at 25 to 9. The season of Sundays, as I've already mentioned, at 10 to 9. And then talking points at 9:15. So we'll get into the ESRI in just a moment. Let's have a look at the back pages.
Yeah, you know when like a newspaper is failing, they just kind of change the front of it. So they've just changed the font in OTB AM to kind of to jizz it up a bit, like, but I do like it actually. Looks a lot different. It's changed in the last 2 weeks.
Well, I mean, a newspaper. It is actually, yeah. Have you not been in the studio in the last?
I was in once, but I was kind of shouted down. But you know the way it's like, oh, we need to do something, so let's change the front of the paper, let's change the font, or let's change the size of the paper. OTB AM is thriving.
Compared us to a failing newspaper.
Yeah, but no, I really like it. I really, really like. What is the font type?
You're asking the wrong guy here. As like, I couldn't tell you what a nice retro jersey is, let alone what a font type is. It's not Comic Sans, is all I can tell you.
Will I start with the star?
Go for it.
Carlo Rising, Everton poised to appoint Ancelotti. So it looks like he's back. He's going to come back. And then obviously this Ross turns down a 10 million FEI request. So this is going to be all over the papers today that the FEI have been told by the government that we're not kind of bailing you out to the tune of 10 million, which is understandable, I suppose. Yeah,
more on that in a moment. Back page of the Mirror is Lottie Potty. The Lottie headline is in relation to Carlo Ancelotti. He's closing in on Goodison hot seat after Everton Chiefs plan amazing coup. And City Fury after Arteta's late night Gunners meeting, and then I have a couple of headlines from Zaha's stunning equaliser last night for Crystal Palace against Brighton, and it's for Real this time. Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola handled an explosive Champions League reunion with old foes Real Madrid.
Amazing coup was interesting because he is a manager that's getting on a bit, and the Napoli thing didn't exactly work out. But this is the Irish Daily Mail. Again, the FAI's 10 million snub. Snub might be a little bit harsh considering the position they're in. Ruby Walsh, I've scratched that itch and I'm not going back. That's from a Paddy Power sponsored podcast in the Boar's Head that was attended by journalists. He said, I'm kind of done with it. Carney fails to make the grade for Farrell. I was actually asking Alan Quinlan about this, was it last week, just is he going to make some really ruthless calls, and I suppose that's the start of them, if you'd even call it ruthless.
Irish Examiner is names in the frame. Who's in pole position on the road to Istanbul? Going nowhere. Leinster dismissed Sexton's move to Lyon, which was obviously linked and floated yesterday. Internal dispute, concerns expressed over fundamental integrity of the Cork County Board, while Carney holds on as chairman of Galway County Board. Club legend, meanwhile, Kevin Markham discusses Waterville, the greats in the retirement with Noel Cronin, and footballing crisis. Sports Minister Shane Ross says FAI sought €10 million bailout.
Back of the Herald, time to step up. Klopp keeping close eye on Pools. Irish kid Kelleher was expected to start against Villa tonight, and a big game for Caoimhin Kelleher as he attempts to kind of force his way into, I don't, if not the Liverpool scene, at least kind of gain a bit of experience. And end of an era as Carney left out, which we've explained.
Irish Independent has a cracking story on the back page. Michael Verney, Galvin faces player backlash after wielding Wexford axe. I'll give you the details on that in just a moment, because they've got a couple of other stories here as well. Everton confident of securing Ancelotti to replace Silva, and Farrell discards Carney as he names his first training squad.
Is that Stuart Lancaster with James Horn?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Sorry, for anybody who didn't see that, I forgot to mention that. It is printed on the back page of the Irish Independent. James Horn went to Leinster training yesterday, pictured as well with Leo Cullen. Like, we've seen this happen quite a bit, not just with coaches, both with GAA players. Johnny Cooper, of course, spent a bit of time in the Leinster camp as well last year, and James Horn, the latest to go in and seek a bit of advice. Like, you don't want to take too much of a leap. He's clearly just going in to get a bit of an outlook on high performance setups. But like asking Leo Cullen the question about, you were bridesmaids to Munster for quite a while. How did you manage to turn it around in Leinster? Like, as I said, I don't want to dig too much into it. I'm sure at face value it's just like looking at high performance. But there is a small bit of a parallel between the rise of Leinster and where perhaps Mayo are at the moment.
Small.
They're certainly perhaps not achieving what they want to achieve or haven't done in living memory. And that's certainly something that Leinster were at before they took over and they became the dominant province.
Vinnie Perth actually was in earlier this year with them as well. This is the back of the Guardian. Lovely feature on the Dancing Sisters, a remarkable story, and also a sick joke. Italian football's new own goal in their anti-racism campaign. They just cannot get this right at all in Italy, and it's just getting worse as well. So plenty of reading in the Guardian.
Irish Times, Madrid Giants will push Liverpool and Manchester City to the limit, while Scottish club can reach final, says Neil Lennon. Celtic face Copenhagen in the last 32, while Manchester United draw Club Brugge.
Madrid are 20-1 to win the Champions League. I just saw that today. I was like, when was the last time Real Madrid were 20-1 to win the Champions League? It's kind of mad. I was looking at the betting now. Liverpool have closed in on Man City at the top. There's very little between them. Because neither of them I don't think either of them has been utterly outstanding this season. But and obviously Pogba featured on the back of the Sun. I saw this myself yesterday. He was doing a little dance at his brother's wedding. Yeah, I kind of feel sorry for him to an extent, because his video of him at his brother's wedding, which is obviously a personal occasion, is on social media, and then he's photographed with his dog out, Take Pog Out, just a play on the dog, I suppose. Croc Star back in the groove, and then about Arteta and Ancelotti's moves, and that's the back of the Sun.
The Times leads with the Arteta story. Arsenal close in on deal to land Arteta. 9-month ban for Rob Howley, and Sky to review stump Mike Hughes in their cricket coverage. That's it for these. We'll just show you the Mayo News. Oh, sorry, Race Post.
We have to get to the Mayo News, really, don't we? But this is the front of the Racing Post. This is something we probably won't have time to get into here, but Santa delivers. All favourites won at Plumpton yesterday, page 5. And I thought what was a little bit... there was a nice symmetry to this, because when you go to the actual story on page 5, bookmaker woe as all 7 Plumpton favourites oblige, and this is kind of symptomatic of the problems facing on-course bookmakers at the moment. But below that, turnover and profit soar as Bet365 posts strong set of accounts, and Bet365 online gambling turnover nearly breached the 3 million mark. So that's a story for another day. But racing is in a tricky place at the moment in terms of betting.
That's you done?
That's me done.
We will just have a look at the Mayo News, and we're not going to spend too long on it. This is obviously great coverage across the newspaper this morning, which is out in Mayo, of the county convention at the weekend.
Great coverage.
This is, well, within the Mayo News. PRO slams radio broadcaster video is just a story I suppose we just have to mention here. It's Ger Flanagan's story. So for anybody who hasn't seen this, returning Mayo GAA PRO Paul Kinane has criticised the national radio broadcaster who he claims made a mockery of Mayo GAA during the reporting of a county board meeting last month. So this is remarkable. In his acceptance speech after defeating Ballycroy's Michael Gallagher for the post of Public Relations Officer, Kinane took issue with Newstalk's Off the Ball for their reporting of an emergency Mayo GAA meeting of club delegates early last month. The video in question, posted to the Off the Ball Twitter page, received over 166,000 views.
And counting.
Didn't know it was that much, to be quite honest. On the night of the meeting, which was, I did actually.
It's updated every day.
Which was called due to the escalating row with the Mayo GAA International Supporters Foundation. So, like, I'm not sure, was this actually in his acceptance
No one likes
speech?
to see GAA and the Mayo GAA in the headlines. I mean, what?
Says
Surely they want to be in the headlines for some reason.
Ultimately, it's not my name or the officer's name, it's Mayo GAA's name, and no one wants to see Mayo in the headlines. We had an instance during the year where a radio broadcaster sent a reporter down to a meeting and made a mockery of Mayo GAA. I mean, how dare you do that to us? How dare you treat Mayo GAA like that? For some content in social media to make an absolute fool out of us and how we do our business just because we're having an emergency meeting with our clubs. That's no way for the media to conduct themselves either.
Right there.
Certainly we haven't done things right, but we do a lot of good things, and a lot of the officers have outlined some of the good things that we do today. So
I think there's a glaring omission in the whole article. Your bloody name. I mean, is your name, are you too big to piss off now after the year you've had?
I think, to be honest with you, there could be another video that was done, perhaps. He hasn't specified. There could be numerous 166,000 view videos that have been done this year.
If we can confirm there, I'm pretty sure it is your video.
The only thing I really hope for here is that this was actually done in his acceptance speech to the whole people of Mayo.
Like a golden cleric speech.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
Very golden cleric.
Use it to settle a few, not even old scores, quite fresh scores. I mean, this was only about 6 weeks ago, was it?
About that, yeah. What
Your
I
life
would say,
changed much since?
Hugely. What I would say is that what has been failed to mention here is that this was a meeting, obviously, where media were not allowed to attend. This is a meeting where I sent specific questions to the PRO in question here, and I asked him would he be responding to those questions, and he very flatly said no. I actually even offered Mayo County Board the opportunity to read their pre-prepared statement down the barrel of my camera, or I could even perhaps send questions for them to plan and actually answer questions to, because, you know, I travelled all the way to Mayo and it would be nice to come away with a bit of video.
How'd you get down there?
I got the train, actually.
Yeah, got out of Castlebar?
Castlebar. Michaela Park is very accessible.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you're stuck outside and you've got no content and your crowd has sent you down? To be honest with you, it wasn't even to make video. It was because I was absolutely bored out of my tree. And,
sorry, what's your name again?
My name is Eoin Sheahan, Johnny.
Sheahan. Somebody knows your name.
Somebody somewhere does know my name. But that's the Mayo News this morning. Slammed.
I can see the Jesui Own hashtag taking off like already. You know?
I want to get into the Paul Galvin story, as I mentioned, because it's on the back of
Boy Verney with a good story.
It's a great story. So Galvin faces player backlash after wielding Wexford Axe. That is the main story this morning on the back page of the Irish Independent. So a bit of a backlash, I think, to say the least. Just the cliff notes from this. First of all, he's dropped Dahi Waters, who is Wexford's long-serving midfielder. Given his age, I think he's 33 years old at the moment.
33, yeah.
Could be the end of his career. Michael Furlong is also gone. He's last year's captain. Matt Doyle is also gone. He's last year's goalkeeper. But then on top of that, there's been a show of solidarity, which is the last thing any manager wants to hear, between the rest of the players. You've got Kieran O'Grady and Tiernan Rossiter, who've also left the panel. And then there's this other nuisance for Paul Galvin, which means Matty Ford has left the backroom team now. He was a fantastic addition, I would have felt, to the backroom team. He's also left, but I should state that in the article it is said that he's left due to work commitments, not due to whatever's going on here. That's what it said in the article.
Take that at face value, I suppose.
For sure. But this is not a good start for Paul Galvin when he's clearly tried to make a point with some of the older players, wants to go for youth. But these older players aren't just old, they're clearly experienced and they have a lot of sway in the dressing room, and that sway has actually taken players with him. So not good, and like it's obviously been a disaster over 2019 for them. So in one way, you're thinking to yourself, but you do need a bit of a clear out after a disastrous year. But yeah, God, this is not good headlines for Wexford football.
I would respect his right though to make that decision, and I'm not sure about players like opting out of playing for their county in solidarity to others who've been omitted from the panel for reasons that presumably are entirely football related. And that's not to say they won't be introduced back into the panel at some stage. So I would respect him. What I wouldn't respect him is. I once bought one of his designer coats, and 2 of the buttons fell off like within 2 weeks, like literally within 2 weeks. So I just took all the buttons off, and I wear the coat now without any buttons, as if it's some fashion. But I just lost all the buttons because they just fell off. So Paul Galvin, he better be a better manager than he is, making coats from the likes of me.
Well, there's no suggestion that the lack of button making has transferred into inter-county football at the moment.
Small suggestion.
So a small suggestion. Like we can only kind of. Gauge it on O'Byrne Cup so far, 2 defeats. Like, to be fair, it is kind of ridiculous when we think about the fact that we do have a couple of games to judge them by. Like inside the newspaper this morning,
absolutely, yeah.
Eddie Brennan has hit out. It's also Michael Verney accused the GAA of trying to wind people up, which he kind of has a point. Like it almost seems like an obvious thing. I didn't even think of it myself, that there is almost a suggestion from the GAA to not get out and train in November. And yet they have pre-season competitions happening in the first week of December.
We'll discuss this in the SRI report later. But I think definitely one of the big issues is the length of the season and how much time these people have to live normal lives, and to also be playing this time of year, and there's indifference and so forth. It's a long way from the heat of the summer, and to be told not to be training is, I don't know, it's a bit of a cod, like.
Yeah, like it's one of the things that is mentioned in the SRI report today, that perhaps the season is just too long and that more enjoyment is required. It's going to be tough to enjoy yourself this time of the year. Like, I would say that in a strange way, the most enjoyable time of the year for an inter-county player is probably February, March, when they've got league games consistently, and they feel like that they're achieving something within their own division.
And they've possibly done through the hardest training to an extent, like where now they can kind of, like, they're hard, like, I don't know how, I'd say it's fairly depressing to be training this time of year, with the view to what? Do you know what I mean? So anyway.
Yeah, the FAI is also on the back pages this morning. There's a couple of interesting things. Sheahan Ross saying that they turned down a request from the FAI for a €10 million bailout. 90-minute meeting last night, so it was short and snappy. Brendan Griffin was there, Ross was there, 6 members of the FAI. Basically, Paul Cook is going to go back to discuss with the Bank of Ireland in terms of their stadium loan. And
this is the thing, because Paul Cook's tone has changed a bit now, where I think he's probably, in view of what happened yesterday, he's probably embraced in reality, where he's kind of... Neil O'Riordan has some very good stuff in the Sun today, which I may mention here. Some of which is to do with the ongoing crisis at the FAI. There's another piece as well where he makes a very valid point that Limerick's demise. Now we had a Limerick manager, Tommy Barrett, in last week, and this is on page 46 and 47. Limerick's demise, a depressing reflection on the state of the game. And this is a column from Neil O'Riordan. And he says, it's the sort of crisis which in years gone by, former FAI CEO John Delaney would have relished. But he goes into the first division now, which is in a bit of a dilemma in terms of how many clubs are in the next season. But Limerick's demise made very little news. And we just happened to have Tommy Barrett in here because he happened to be in Dublin. But if you read Paul Cook's comments, he's kind of deviated from... We will restructure our finances. Everything should be okay to... we're talking to Bank of Ireland at the moment, and we're kind of seeing what we can do. It looks, from reading the papers at the weekend, there was a lot of, obviously, analysis in the Business Post on Sunday and other papers. It looks increasingly likely that something is going to have to seriously give here. Like, the organisation is going to be rendered completely obsolete, or it's going to split into two or something. Because where are they going to... Michael McDowell's wife, Niamh Brennan, she's an expert in corporate governance, she's saying, like, you have no real asset here. Your asset is a stadium that you have kind of a questionable ownership over. So how can you have a deal with the banks when you have actually no asset to sell as collateral down the line?
That Irish Times article now seems to be the text that everybody is just reading off over the night. Like, it was a brilliant piece, but it almost just kind of clicked with everybody in terms of what it actually is wrong here.
I was quite annoyed I didn't go after. I've had dealings with Niamh before, back in the day when we were looking into kind of some dealings with horse racing, and she was brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant, but she simplifies stuff that isn't, that simple either. But it looks, I don't understand, but I can't really see beyond, like, someone saying, listen, I'm going to pass away in the next 10 or 15 years. I have a load of money, just take 60 million. Because I don't think that's going to happen. So it seems that the FAI is becoming increasingly hopeless as a going concern.
And one of those ideas of what the dawn might be, if there is a dawn, is explored by Declan Lee in the Indo today as well. And New Look FAI still has the potential to be the best show in town for sponsors. So this obviously comes off the back that one of the many stories we had over the last couple of weeks was 3 pulling their sponsorship, understandably so, from the FAI. Now they said that they wanted to focus on music, of course, and that their sporting portfolio perhaps is kind of done and dusted on the football front. But it is, in many ways, a bit of an opportunity. Like, if you accept that the lowest ebb perhaps hasn't happened but is getting close after that, and after what comes from perhaps a new organisation, like, it wouldn't be the worst sponsorship portfolio to have. It's still a bit of a risk, mind you.
But you're sponsoring the Irish football team. Like,
that's it. You're not sponsoring the FAI.
You know what I mean? So and as it was anyway, the jerseys that anyone bought for years, for as long as I can remember, much to my annoyance and that of many football fans, when you bought the actual international jersey, it had the sponsors on it, even though the sponsor wouldn't be on it during match night. But I presume you'd be getting a cut price. You get a lot of publicity. You'd get at least a week's publicity out of it if you really dragged it out. It's like, well, we're back in Irish football and blah blah blah. And as I made this point before, Michael O'Leary bought a shitload of planes after 9/11 for good reason, because he was people for their own absolute stupidity were afraid of flying because of one day, and he got them at a massive discount, realising that there was a herd mentality and it was getting it's a really good opportunity, I think. But I don't know if the FAI is going to be around to even negotiate a deal. I honestly don't know. And just think of the League of Ireland as well, Eoin. Like, there was a text, I'm in a Galway United's match programme WhatsApp group, one of them, millions of WhatsApp groups were all in or whatever, and it's like, do we know how many home games we're playing next season? Absolutely not. Don't know how many teams are in the, like, it's nearly the end of the year, the season starting in February, and we don't know the makeup of the League of Ireland next season.
Yeah,
like, that's a shambles. Imagine the Premier League in sort of June, not knowing how many teams were in it. It's like, and this is just accepted as normal now. It's embarrassing.
I want to move on to a couple of other stories. We'll get to Arteta and Ancelotti in just a moment, but just to touch on the rugby news carried in all the newspapers this morning, this mid-season stock take. The officially termed stock take, one-day training camp, where we actually know the squad, the amount of people, the 45 men that are going to be in this group.
This is the departure from the Schmidt era.
It is actually.
Yeah.
There'd often be a lot of whispers, a lot of conjecture about who's in, who's out from these Schmidt camps, but Andy Farrell has actually said, no, I'm going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to actually say who's in the squad. I know a couple of things he's done differently. No Rob Kearney, no Sean Cronin. And then perhaps, like, for those reasons, you'd imagine that it's going to be tough for them to get back into the Ireland squad at any point.
As they get older.
But then there's no Jack Carty as well. He's obviously had a poor season with Connacht since he's come back from the World Cup. But no Jordy Murphy is probably the biggest omission, because he's been pretty good, and Ulster have been very, very good. So it's hard to know why that is. But obviously some great opportunities for some young players here. The thing about this, when people think to themselves, right, if there's a couple of injured players who aren't in and around the squad, well, you've got like Johnny Sexton involved with the squad at the moment, and you've got this sort of political situation in the background now about who will actually get the captaincy at the moment. And I'm sure this will have no real bearing on it, but I do wonder if behind closed doors at this stock take, a captain has been named, and they are proceeding with whoever that the person is that's going to lead Ireland into the Six Nations.
It's not that, what is it away, like 6 weeks or something?
6 weeks, I think at this point, maybe 7.
Yeah, so I'm sure he's watching on. The provinces are in very good health generally at the moment, particularly Leinster's strength and depth must be really encouraging to them when they can just change their team and sort of do and have the game won after like 5 minutes basically on Saturday. But I'm fascinated by I'm absolutely fascinated by the out-half situation, what he's going to do there. Is it certain that Sexton, who's going to go in there a little bit cold because of his injury, will he be loyal to him? And the Kearney thing is probably not entirely unexpected, but it's not comparable to the FEI, but he is taking over a regime that had probably reached its end, and also that, where Ireland had serious questions to answer for the last year since the New Zealand game, where this year has been not good. And I think he will have to try to bring in his own style of rugby as well. It makes it a lot more expansive, and great time to be taking over. And like last year we were hot favourites to win the Six Nations. This year we're like second or third favourites behind England, and there are lots of nice ingredients for him there, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And like when you say about the regime perhaps being tainted by how it ended. But of course, Andy Farrell was part of this. And I know it's only a very small thing actually announcing the stock take team.
But you're suggesting that he's trying to kind of say this is a new regime now, and I'm making a quite pointed difference.
I think so.
Yeah.
And like maybe it's reading too much into whether or not something gets announced, but Joe Schmidt read a lot into the media and read a lot into publicity and what was being said about him and written about him. So I think it's fair game to actually analyse why this has been announced, a bit more transparency and less conjecture. Like it's interesting that you mentioned the situation at 10. Like I would have thought that Johnny Sexton will be Ireland's best out half in the year 2020. Like Joey Carberry's had his injury worries. It's the question of whether or not you get into the next World Cup cycle, who will be the best out half at the end of the next World Cup cycle, and there's every chance that Joey Carberry will be that guy. But I think it's just a situation of throwing the baby out with the bathwater and getting rid of him too soon if that's the case, because he's in the captaincy mix as well, and possibly the front runner to get the captaincy. I'm not quite sure. We'll have more on that across the Off the Ball channels as the week progresses, of course. Just a couple of last stories we want to get to in the papers, and it's two managerial stories. It is Carlo Ancelotti. You mentioned a golf from your tone at the top of the show that perhaps he's a bit past it in your view.
You can get very ageist with managers now, where like that's the thing about Palace, and obviously having Roy Hodgson there, he's definitely an outlier. And if you look at the managerial appointments that the FAI made, they went for, apart from Steve Staunton, who was a bit of a gamble, they thereafter went for these proven managers like Mick, Martin O'Neill and Trapp were very much at the latter stages of their career when they took the jobs. And it's like, well, should we not be kind of looking for somebody like Stephen Kenny, for example, that might have new revolutionary ideas, because I don't think the lads have. Ancelotti, if you look at his Napoli reign hasn't been an unqualified success. But I suppose for Everton's perspective, he's still a very big name for, when were Everton last in Europe, for example? I can't remember. They're a club that don't really, they're mid-table at best sort of most seasons. They haven't they've had a very, very poor season. So it is probably a bit of a coup, but I like Ancelotti. I think it'll be interesting. You can never have enough Italian managers, I think, and it'll be interesting to see. And obviously Arteta.
You go get your manager in the middle of the night. Arsenal trying to with a lot of subterfuge, backfire dramatically.
Yeah, where was the photo? It didn't really look like Arteta. What's going on here?
It's not Arteta. It's Arsenal's
Who is
CEO.
This is Vini. Okay, so this is like
that's at Mikel Arteta's house at 2 o'clock in the morning. So
what happened there? Did somebody just like take a chance, or was it like they got a bit of a rumour that he might go to the house?
Presumably got a bit of a rumour, and Manchester City also got a bit of a rumour because they had no idea until we're led to believe that they had no idea until those pictures came out. So. Like they're reportedly very annoyed with Arsenal. They're not too annoyed with Mikel Arteta, but still, it takes two to tango in this. And Mikel Arteta had these guys over to his house in the middle of the night. I can't imagine if they broke in and interrogated him. I'd imagine this was this came from both sides. He was up for the conversation, so it looks like that's going to be a bit of a done deal. Kieran in the box says did the same thing with Sol Campbell, visited him in the middle of the night to sign for Arsenal as well. So you could say it's definitely happening. Betting has been suspended on Mikel Arteta, but it was suspended on Mikel Arteta as well before Unai Emery got appointed. So it would be quite the U-turn if Arsenal were to screw him over twice. And I don't know, like I'm kind of surprised that Arteta is just allowing this to happen so easily. I thought that after getting screwed over previously that he would have thought to himself, well, no, I'm not going back to Arsenal. With the current regime that are there and the current people who run the club, I'm never giving them another chance. And it's also a bit of a risk because...
if it goes badly, his currency is in a bad way, obviously.
The board just need to shut out everything that is going to be said or written about him if things don't go well. And I'm talking in 18 months. Like we could be in 18 months down the line, and it could be a situation where Arsenal are still struggling to maintain their top 6 position.
Yeah.
But it'll be for the greater good. Like I really believe that he's one of the best coaches in Europe at the moment. Pep Guardiola doesn't talk nonsense about people unless he truly believes it. And I take Pep Guardiola at face value when he says that this guy is one of the better coaches he's worked with. So
he needs to get a bit of backbone into that team. They've just, for so long now, they've lacked proper leaders and proper ability to get the job done and crumble under pressure and all that. One other thing I just want to mention as well is linking in with Zach. Lincoln City rather bought Zach El Bouzedi from Watford. I think it was the Daily Mail mentioned a reputed fee of 30 grand, which I just think that that sort of stuff really shouldn't be happening anymore. He's a regular Irish under-21 international. He's a good player, and Watford, who really could do with the money, to be only getting 30 grand is disappointing. And still lots of doubts about Watford next season, what sort of money they'll have, and obviously losing key players. They've lost at least 3 key players in the off season, and he's the biggest name. But best of luck to him at Lincoln. He's a very promising player.
Absolutely. And then last story. I presume you've seen the one about Magnus Carlsen.
I haven't actually.
The Norwegian chess grandmaster, current world champion.
Yeah. Fantasy football.
Well, he was just an update. He is no longer top of fantasy football. He's dropped down to lowly 3rd position after last night's efforts. I would say big congratulations to him. He captained Salah this weekend, which some people perhaps wouldn't have given him
Bold
the armband.
call.
And it's actually a fairly high-profile fantasy football league. He's now been replaced at the top by Nick Tanner, who is a former Liverpool player himself. So
I remember him. Yeah, Nick Tanner. Yeah,
Bristol Rovers as well.
Yeah, that would have been around the time, I think, of that Liverpool away jersey I was talking about.
And Carlson's secret apparently is Optadata. So the rest of us plebs obviously don't have access to Optadata, but a Norwegian chess grandmaster can get it, and that's why his team is doing so well. So back in 3rd this morning.
Nicky Tanner, yeah. Born 1965. Oh,
it's
wow.
amazing, isn't it?